Good morning and welcome once again, everyone. My name is Lou Romano. I'm the president of KCF. I have the honor and the privilege of conducting our final session of the morning here at this particular venue. In fact, immediately following this panel discussion, I'll be providing you with instructions on how we're going to make our way over to Beaver Stadium for this afternoon's presentations. Stay tuned. But first, I'm very excited to introduce you to our panel. This group of industry experts has graciously given their time and are willing to share their insights around the implementation of predictive maintenance at their organizations. Let's meet them now. Hot seat number one, David, you are no stranger to this stage. You presented a keynote for us just last year. Remind the good folks in the audience of your experience in the industry.
Sure. Thank you. Again, Dave Bonfante, thanks a lot for having me back here. I've been with Georgia Pacific 16 years now. Last couple of roles were serving alongside Mr. Brodsky as a director of reliability for a segment. He led container. I had building products. Another mentor of mine, Lee Davis, had consumer. So fun time. For the last 6 years, I've been doing, I guess, in this transformative space around reliability. So all my roles have been maintenance reliability. Last 6 years have been condition monitoring and asset health. So think of asset health as the moment in time, how are my assets running, progressing? And asset care is sort of traditional reliability, blocking and tackling that I have a peer now that works on that. So excited to be here, and thanks a lot for having me back.
Thank you, David, and welcome back. Tatiana, we have a very unique relationship with your organization in the respect that we work with Neighbors, your parent company, directly on their drilling operations. And now we're starting to implement through the platform called RigCLOUD, which you represent. Provide the folks with some context on your background and a little bit about RigCLOUD.
Sure. So I have a slightly different experience than anyone else. I started on the rig side, working as a DD, MWD on the rig for about 3-5 years in Brazil. Then I went as a drill engineer, etc. And then I went into the digital world with the digital transformation from Schlumberger at that time. And then I fell in love with software development and leading the digital transformation. So I joined Neighbors around 3 years ago, and I've been leading RigCLOUD for now 6 months. But have been with Neighbors on the automation side, technology, etc. So our relationship is a little bit different than anyone else. I haven't been implementing KCF itself. I've been selling that through our platform. But being in Neighbors, we have the opportunity to have them as our main customer, but we're also taking that outside Neighbors.
Excellent. Welcome to you. Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you.
Mr. Eutsey, longtime friend and advocate of KCF in your past lives, but you recently started at a new organization. Fill the folks in on what's the latest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that think you're not a big fish in KCF's pond, I think right now I've got 24 sensors deployed, so probably one of the smaller. Been with Synthomer here about 4 months, maintenance engineering leader over there. Prior to, I was working with David, Tom, several others in the audience over at Georgia Pacific, Guardian Industries, and Koch Industries. Acting in various reliability roles, and prior to that, a lot of nuclear Navy. So I can relate to those little points that you went out and did the individual measurements. So happy to be here.
Thanks for being here, John. And last but never least, Carpenter Technologies, Alex, metals manufacturer. You recently returned to Carpenter after a brief hiatus. Fill everybody in on your experience.
I've been in maintenance world, guess all my life. I always call it the black hole. Once I got there, I wasn't able to get out. And I always been told that I'm too technical to move on into the other parts of the organization. But I had a good fortune that I started working in Owens Corning probably about 25 years, 30 years ago. And in my first job, right out of school, was in preventive maintenance. And that was the company that introduced me to vibration analysis. They gave me a box with a tiny, tiny screen and 2 numbers. They used to do vibrations in decibels. And there were no trainings at that time, nothing. So I was forced to learn vibration analysis from the books. So I read all that theory and all those calculations and everything. And but definitely, the potential for these technologies was there, and the evolving has been dramatic. When I started this, I remember when I saw the first thermal imaging camera, there were two guys carrying that. You know, one guy, the camera used to be like those old big TV cameras, and another guy was carrying something on the side. And now we can buy a camera, you know, for less than $1,000, and sensors are cheaper. So it's been a journey for me, and over the last 15 years, I've been working at corporate level, and basically selling, you know, at a corporate level what technology can do for us nowadays.
Thank you very much. Welcome to you, Alex. Thank you all once again for your willingness to participate today. I had the pleasure of joining KCF 3.5 years ago, and prior to that, I spent a combined 15 years running 3 separate brewing companies across the United States. In many instances, we used the exact same ingredients and the exact same equipment to brew and package our beer, but the culture at those companies was all uniquely different. And that required change and change management to be approached differently as well. So this first line of questioning is going to dig into that notion of implementing change and elevating the worker on the floor. So the first submitted question is for all of you. We'll start with David and work on down the line. As leaders and change makers yourselves, take us into the approach that you used to introduce disruptive technology into the organization, and changing that cultural behavior and very much the human propensity to just want to do things the way they've always been done.
Sure. I think, so I think 2 thoughts come to mind. And the first one, I actually want to piggyback off of something that Tom Brodsky discussed in his most recent presentation here. I think it's always important to start with the value prop and not the tech. The quickest way to actually integrate technology into your business is not to start with the technology, oddly enough, but to start with value and the problem statement. So if you go hunting for a solution to a problem that's unknown, it's very difficult to sort of broadly scale that across an organization, especially one that is as ingrained in doing vibration the old way as ours. We've been doing vibration analysis for 30 years. So I think that unplanned events and unplanned downtime, we're still eating our lunch. You know, I think we had data 5-6 years back. And so we had some sort of thing to kick off, some sort of value prop to start with. So that's the first thing I would call out. The second thing that I feel like really helped us was getting face-to-face with the employees who would be affected. In the reliability and vibe space, I think that community is very tight-knit. Actually, I think you all probably know each other. I think if you lead analysts or know analysts, they probably all know each other. It is a very tight-knit group. It's a passionate group, a group that has cut their teeth for 30 years on the data, on analysis and diagnostics. And so getting in front of them to show them not only what the sensor could do, but how we were going to collaborate around a workflow and a service was pretty key to get them all to Atlanta or to travel to that site. And I think I'll mention again a statement that I think I've mentioned before to a few of you. The one thing I always tried to mention when we had these visits with these reliability and vibe folks is we are not here to supplement or replace your roles and your tasks. Basically, we're here using this new technology and this new workflow to allow that you can stop doing the stuff that you don't like doing about your job and spend the rest of the time doing the stuff you love, right? So no more routes and all diagnosis and problem solving. So that face-to-face interaction was pretty key.
Good stuff. Thank you, David. Tatiana, how about you?
I wish I was the first because he stole all my speech.
That's
But yeah, so I agree with most of what you said, but I think coming with disruptive technology to a company, at least for me, coming from RigCLOUD, trying to implement that at Neighbors. Neighbors is always like up and open for technology. It's like the leader on automation, etc. But in the end, they are all open, but you need to incentivize them. So Neighbors has a program that's called like Performance Driller of the Month, that we don't incentivize only speed and being unsafe, but using the technology is a big piece of the scorecard. So introducing KCF and putting that in the scorecard did incentivize them, because in the end of the day, they're all there to make money. I think someone said that today. So this was number one, making sure the people on the ground knows that the technology is not there to replace them, to elevate them, and that they don't need to walk around the rig anymore to listen to the vibrations on the pumps. They can get alerts on their phones, etc. The other piece is being able to show value, like coming up with the right KPIs to show to the management that all these technology is bringing value and is also making the rig more attractive to a very competitive market. So data and people.
Data and people. Thank you. John.
Yeah, so as everyone had their coffee, because I'm going to talk about an Austrian philosopher and economist.
That sounds wonderful.
Right? So it's from the book Human Action, Ludwig von Mises. I learned this over at Georgia Pacific and have used it there as well as in my current role. For humans to basically take action, you need three elements. Dissatisfaction with the current state, and I kind of call that the status quo. So, this is new technology. Like David said, it's ingrained that, hey, I'm going out with handhelds, I'm doing routes. Getting dissatisfied with that. Is there a better way of doing your job? So showing them, here's the demonstration of how the future looks, what makes your job easier. Get them dissatisfied with what they're doing. Second element you need is a vision for a better state, and that's the beauty of KCF. Chris Morgan and Matt both have come on site many times and shown my folks exactly, here's how it works. It's not replacing your job, it's there to enhance your job. Showing how user-friendly and easy it is. I think that's a big one and a big win because we see a lot of other technologies that aren't like that. And then the third element is you got to believe you can get to that better state. And that's where we've got to have the leadership buy-in. I've got to be able to support my folks saying, this is a good technology and I'm going to support you in moving forward. We're not going to catch everything, but we're going to catch 90% probably more than what we're doing every 4 or 5 months doing our handheld routes. So showing them that, hey, this will lead to a better plant, more predictable and stable operations, and us being safer in the long run.
Great stuff. Thank you, John. Alex?
I think the first thing that I want to say, I don't like the word disruptive. I will use proactive better because I think this technology actually, is one of the most proactive actions that we can use. To introduce these technologies, I usually, when I trying to take a new plan into this, I always recommend a pilot, which I heard several times, but I always tell them a pilot that guarantees success. An easy win. You can plan a win. You can plan to be successful. So don't choose the most complicated machine or the most complicated process that everybody has tried everything over the last few years. Because it's going to be more complex and it's going to be a lot of people looking at that. Choose something that you can make a big hit that people can see what you do. Maybe not a big impact in revenue for the organization, but at least you're going to guarantee success in what you did. The second thing that I recommend the plans, and I personally always do, I know it's kind of like a silly example, but I tell that we need to be like chickens that just lay an egg. If we make a success, if we make a good find, everybody needs to know. Everybody in the facility needs to know what we just achieved using the technology or predictive maintenance. And one of the other things that also shows a lot is cost avoidance and revenues, or for many of us, cost per tons, things like that. I know some finance people don't like the cost avoidance because they call it balloon money, that's something that a little bit intangible. But when you do that and you are able to show that you prevent the loss of downtime in dollars, which is something that is very understandable for everybody, right? That makes a difference. But recently, I was realizing that downtime, when you avoid that downtime, you're actually increasing, the productivity of the organization because you have a steady process. So when in our business we do cost per ton, so I always want to make sure how many cents or how many dollars of that belongs to what we just did.
Such a good point. There's so many smart people in this room and back at our plants and our factories. The human condition kind of gravitates toward the most complex issues first, solving the biggest problems first. Some of the biggest problems exist on some of the most common machinery, and it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And if you can take care of those, you get the quick win, you instill the confidence in the organization, you're better off for success. But Tatiana, this question for you. I suspect you've faced some resistance as you're instituting the technology as a whole, certainly with predictive maintenance built in. How are you overcoming that?
Yeah, I think resistance to change is part of the human being, right? And I think the best way to overcome is showing, yes, it will change for worse sometimes, but in the end, like he said, you need to have the vision of how it's going to look like in the future. So we did go through different levels of organization for resistance to change, for the people on the ground, how they do, their current maintenance system can change, and also how they can be proactive and avoid that unplanned lost time. So for the rigs, we get paid by the day, by the hour. It's a lot of pressure. And to release a little bit of the pressure on their side, we decided to do the pilot and all the baselining using our 24/7 monitoring system. So we could use the people that has a lot of experience, that is in the office. It's outside the very high pressure environment on the field to actually monitor and give feedback to KCF so we can baseline and give only the true alerts to the field, right? Inside the organization, of course, there was change management on the monitoring system. We had KCF coming and presenting and training our people. They got confident that they could actually do a very good job. They feel proud of themselves of avoiding, you know, the unplanned maintenance on the rig. And also showing the KPIs, putting in front of them, continuously monitoring was very important. After the pilot, like we had to present to, you know, the top executives of Neighbors itself, and showing them the value we brought. We had multiple power ends saved on the first 6 months. That's a lot of money saved on their side. We also had a case where we could predict when the pump was going to fail, and we actually put maintenance, and we actually replaced the pump during planned flat time when the rig was moving to another location. So showing them actual real life value was very key to deal with the change management.
I appreciate that. And the value comes in many forms. We tend to think when we talk about technology, proactive technology, to use your term, Alex, of the hardware and the software and the analytics, but it's really the people that get people comfortable and instill that confidence overall. So thank you for that. Transitioning a little bit, David, in your tenure, you've seen a lot of change. Thinking about employees and legacy employees and maintainers, as they retire, they move on, and the next generation of worker comes into the workforce, what is that worker looking for regarding technology to assist their work?
Yeah, the sort of the crystal ball look at the future of employee engagement. I think that, again, just to tie things together, because I hear so many comments that sort of rings true to me. So Jeremy said something to start here, that it's the intersection of technology and people. You know, I don't think we're anywhere close, or frankly, I don't think that we're moving towards sort of robots running manufacturing facilities. You know, I think that I saw this stat, I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics put it out, that over the last 40-year time period, the participation rate in the U.S. in manufacturing has dropped pretty steadily over that time as we sort of migrate, I was about to say mature, but migrate or shift into a service-based sort of, you know, labor pool and economy. And I think that if I look to the future, you know, those things are still going to be true. We're going to be having fewer people. You know, we're going to have to make sure that we can support them with technology, and they're going to want it more and more. It's going to have to become ubiquitous. You know, we grew up doing long division, and eventually you use calculators, you stop doing long division, right? And you move on and sort of mature in that space. So I think that, as much as we can expand providing decision support to the people that are at our facilities and making them more efficient, that's what it's going to look like. I think that it's hard to say from a technology perspective. I do think that we'll move a bit past condition monitoring. So condition monitoring is pretty easy to do. Maybe easy is the wrong word. It's easy to get into. Vibration is pretty rules-based. I tell my process brethren this all the time. Vibration is pretty rules-based. If you're good at signal analysis, I can look at the waveform and the spectrum. There's things that are proven over time that things that are turning do, But we're getting bit a lot by execution problems, other things that don't have to do with condition monitoring. And I think we have to start helping them in those areas too, using things like Gen AI. Maybe there is a place for robotics in so much as it helps people spend more of their time, diagnosing and solving problems, that type of thing. So
Good stuff. John, we have 3 children, 2 in their 20s. One is 17 going on 25. These young adults were born with technology in their hands and are accustomed to being able to look up whatever they need. They're practically cyborgs. How does investing in technology help recruit and retain employees in your experience?
Yeah, and I'm living this life now because I'm rebuilding about a third of my organization. So if they're any good at long division by hand, send them my way. There's 2 parts of this, and David really touched on both a little bit. One's going to be the labor pool. COVID really kick-started everything. 2020, 2021 was the first time in really over a century we've seen less people entering the workforce than leaving. I think in May, we're at like 8.5 million job openings with 6.5 million unemployed. So there's quite the gap, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Everything's showing. So, part of the technology thing is how do we do more work with less resources more efficiently? And that's where a lot of the kids nowadays, but older adults as well, I'm sure everyone in this room is connected with a cell phone, smartwatch, maybe you got your Google glasses on or Apple glasses. Everyone's just come up now with having this technology in their hand. It's part of every day being a consumer. I can't say anything out loud without my Alexa picking up, and next thing I know, it's on Facebook of this ad for something that I didn't know I wanted. So they're already coming to the workforce with that. So unfortunately, manufacturing is similar to, I'll equate it to the military, where we're really slow in adopting new technologies and changes. So being able to increase the pace of that adoption and show, as we're bringing talent in, we're dedicated to continuing to pick up that pace and deployment and show how that integrates with their job. So it's hopefully minimizes that 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning call of this equipment's broke down, and now we can say, hey, we can plan and schedule for this 2, 3, 4 weeks out, because KCF and other technologies are allowing us to do that condition-based and predictive type alerting.
Right, rather than going into the weekend flying blind and waiting to see what happens, right?
Hope and a prayer.
That's right, hope and a prayer. We all have them. Okay, transitioning a little bit, and the conversation, as expected, was naturally flowing this way, but let's dig into it a little bit deeper. We talked about implementing the change and elevating the worker. Now let's talk a little bit about how to measure ROI, which is things that a lot of management people say at organizations, rightfully so. But equally as importantly, how on the ground, one-to-one with these person-to-person relationships, how we mutually define what success looks like. So Alex, this question will lead off with you. There's a lot of new innovations in maintenance reliability. Can you share with the audience the KPIs you've put in place and how you measure the impact of the predictive maintenance strategy at Carpenter?
When I think in KPIs, there's a couple things that always come to my mind. Paralysis by analysis.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, taking things to the extreme. And then I remember always an Indian master used to say, simplify, simplify, simplify. And I come to say this because I've been doing this for a long time, and I have seen my journey from extremely complex ways to measure everything that not everybody's able to digest, through complicated dashboards, measuring everything that I thought it was possible to measure. And I also had met people with a strong beliefs and understanding of KPIs and lagging and leading indicators, et cetera, et cetera. And I always come to think, a KPI is a tool. It should help us, to progress. It shouldn't be used to feel us made unsuccessful or bad. It should help us to understand that we are on a journey, that how we are progressing. So when I introduce KPIs, I always thinking who's going to be getting the benefit of understanding this. And there are some KPIs for leadership. There are some KPIs that you can use for middle management. There are other KPIs that you can use at supervisor level. So for high level, especially with vice presidents and finance people, is on-time delivery. It's something that, at the end of the day, is what it really matters. You are delivering your product on time, and which means, that the cost meets, the cost that the company is planning. If you go all the way down to the supervisor level, then you need to think in something like, what he's interested most? Mean time to repairs, for instance, is something that he wants to know, right? Are my guys doing the jobs on time? Then, for instance, for the predictive maintenance job, and one of my coworkers is here, and how we using our CMMS to account for of the jobs that benefit for predictive maintenance. And most of CMMS are not very clear in classifying the work orders coming from predictive maintenance. So even if we had to create a code or something, right, to track, what is the benefit? Because the predictive maintenance technician is going to find something, or the technology is going to find something, right? And a work order need to be created. I always insist that a work order is fundamental because it's the tool that allows you to measure pretty much everything that you want to measure. And again, many other KPIs that you can use. I know you guys have heard about mean time between failures, reactive work, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line, you want to know, when you go to a new facility, personally, I want to hear, what is your percentage of reactive work? Being hours, labor, work orders. To me, give me a little bit of perspective of what is going on, right? And then, those numbers stick to your mind, and then you can tell if I'm improving or not.
Getting to know you, Alex, I appreciate how simplistic you keep things, and that also makes it understandable for everyone throughout the organization in its entirety. David, I'm curious for your insights. Georgia Pacific, longtime partner, how are you evaluating your PDM program?
That's actually a great question for GP, and appreciate that. We track things like unplanned events, unplanned downtime. We track OEE pretty extensively across most of our businesses. And we used to track cost avoidance pretty closely. But I can tell you that we started the condition monitoring journey 35, 40 years ago. And I think it's become sort of table stakes, as my boss likes to use those words. It's pretty ubiquitous. There's not a lot of proof having to go around that it actually works. And so, we have gravitated away from sort of the cost avoidance measure or the direct measure from sort of vibration analysis into looking at failure and that avoided cost, and just continue to use UPE. I think that we're just doing it differently. With KCF sensors and the advent of AI and cloud computing, this and that, we're able to provide a centrally staffed team to provide decision support for our sites. I think on a look back, we did look, because again, we haven't eliminated jobs as part of this endeavor. But if I look back at our site staffing, every site, almost to a T, is working with almost half their predictive tech element. You know, so a site that would have staffed 4 level 3s now has 2. And that's not because there's not openings. Either we're just not attracting and retaining like we used to, you know, 10, 20 years ago. And so I think, you know, just continuing to have our eye on that unplanned downtime metric and OEE from a productivity standpoint, I mean, has worked for us. I think we're fortunately to work for a company that values reliability enough that we don't have to prove out the fact this vibration stuff works. It's a good place to be, you know. And I think that not everybody is there. I remember we were not there, certainly, but it's a good spot to be. So,
Good stuff. Tatiana, you first mentioned KPIs in your original answer. Can you dig in a little bit deeper? What are you contemplating putting in place, or what do you have in place already to get that confidence of the teams and your customers that you're selling your platform to?
So for RigCLOUD itself, we have a lot of data, but it's a lot of drilling data. It's not a lot of maintenance data. So I think our first challenge was to have access to that data from neighbors, maintenance systems. And then also we had to make some changes on how we report non-productive time on the rig. We were not granular enough, as you said. Sometimes you have to change actually the business system, the recording business system. So it took us some time to make those changes to get access to consumables. Are we actually reducing the amount of consumables? But in the end, when you look at the high level, what we are trying to promote is less non-productive time of the rig. So that was one that was easy. It was part of RigCLOUD already. We had to promote more granularity. But now when we present to our customers, so we have 2 customers, right? So Neighbors is my customer as RigCLOUD, but in the end, Neighbors needs to report to all the oil producers. So for them, what matters is I want to finish my well quicker so I have a less time to force oil. And how can I do that is either reducing and being more efficient on how I drill my well or removing unplanned events. So putting that in front of the operator was super easy for us because we were measuring well non-productive time. But putting value and KPIs into how much money you're saving for each event was not as easy. And aligning that with Neighbors to say, yes, all these fluid ends were saved, but how can I measure how much money I made out of this and what's going to be my ROI? It is still a challenge. And I think we have to go, sometimes if it's a major failure, we have to go event by event and align across with our customer, Neighbors, on what is the value brought by that KPI. But the easy ones, we integrated into RigCLOUD, and it's available for them.
I do, you know, so that made me think of something. I like that you brought that point up. So one of the biggest danger in this condition monitoring game is you deploy technology or a system or process to avoid failure, but it's not accretive to the P&L. Yes. And so if you can't see it in the P&L, I mean, eventually, it's going to go away. I can guarantee it, or else I wouldn't be running a very good business. I think that what we have to do is pay attention to what else is out there that's eating our lunch that we've, you know, made up for with seeing an issue. So if I see something on the P to F curve and I can't actually fix it properly, or I choose to ignore, you know, the indication of a failure, or I experience mortality, or I have chronic events, something, I don't change the process, you're never going to see that return. And so there is a danger by looking at KPIs. You can track avoided cost, but that's the reason why, from a management perspective, it's very difficult to stay there because that is not accretive to the P&L, especially if you have other problems that you have to solve for in a good, reliable organization, you know, so.
Really good point. Additionally, we 3 connected about this a little bit regarding safety KPIs. I didn't ask Alex this question when we talked last Friday, so I'm going to throw you a wild card because I know you can handle it. Do you have any safety KPIs at Carpenter?
There are. I'm sorry. There are, and it's, of course, 0.
Sure.
Right, but the reality is that things happen, right? And that when it comes to technology, how we can use the technology, right, in our advantage,
I think it's the most underrepresented advantage of using a predictive maintenance platform. U.S. Department of Labor statistics, I'm going by memory, but in the last reporting year, reported like something like 25,000 injuries by maintenance teams. If you dig into that data a little bit more, the top 3 reasons were contact with machinery, trip and fall, and overexertion. All things that imply something broke unexpectedly. So certainly, safety should be on the forefront of everybody's mind. I can speak firsthand at the brewery, the worst accident that I ever saw was when a filler went down unexpectedly and we were just trying to finish a tank and everybody wanted to go home and an accident happened. So if you don't have a KPI related to safety in place, please consider.
But I think there is a beauty in the wireless technology, and that's another good sales point inside the organization. You know, whatever you can implement technology to avoid a human being walking into an area that can jeopardize, right? That's a good thing, you know, because when you got your vibration technician doing routes, right, in complicated environments, right, that's when the wireless technology comes into play.
Thank you. Okay, we talked about implementation. We've talked about the installation of some ROI and key success metrics. We're going to move on to scale. But before we go far and wide, I'm sure there's folks in the audience that are just considering implementation of predictive maintenance for the very first time. John, what advice could you give those folks?
That's a good one. So, you know, I've come from, you know, on David's side where we've scaled several projects across both North America and globally. So experienced that, and now I'm kind of restarting that whole journey from number 24 right now. The way I'm currently approaching this and what seems to really be having a good effect is I'm going to go to war for a little bit here, so stick with me. There's a consulting company out there, Echelon Front, a former Navy SEAL founded it. He's pulled 4 laws of combat, he calls, and you know, how to apply those to business. And that's sort of what I look at when I'm looking, how do I scale this? You know, first one is cover and move. So for business, that's teamwork. You know, a big one that I'm seeing is if we just throw it in maintenance's world, it doesn't scale very large. That, you know, unplanned event avoidance and cost avoidance, it's limited there. But if you pull in safety, like you just mentioned, if you pull in operations, production, environmental, where can this technology be applicable to their areas, which is something we often miss, unless it's a compliance thing. That really helps on scaling those numbers and seeing that value beyond just a pump is down for maintenance issues. Second law is keep it simple. So scaling, you know, I can send every kind of trend and graph to my maintenance folks, and most of them could care less. They just want to know what to go fix and what they're looking at. So that's what I love about the app with KCF is I can get it right to their phone, and this is exactly what you're going to look for and go fix. So keeping that message and communication very simple, I think really helps accelerate. Third one is, excuse me, third one is decentralized command. So, you know, I don't want these decisions of what's valid sticking with me. Push that data down. So again, back to the app, it's simple communication, get it to the folks that are actually making the decisions on the ground. That really helps accelerate this and not bottleneck this kind of scaling. And then the last one, and I always throw this out, is it's, you know, beyond keeping it simple, you've got to figure out how do you look at the larger picture and you know, look at the battle space from that kind of 40,000 foot level. We start with critical equipment, and that's usually where pilots tend to kind of kick off. It's how do you then push that on down? And the safety aspect's huge on that, because oftentimes you got a guy with a handheld unit climbing a ladder in high heat conditions or whatever. You miss that if it's not a critical equipment. But the value of keeping him safe, no trips, falls, those statistics you talked about, putting a sensor up there that's wireless and removes that from his job is huge. So seeing that bigger picture of, again, outside of maintenance, outside of critical equipment, where can this really apply value outside of just the production side, but also on the safety side, I found to be huge.
Love it. Thank you, John. Alex, someone earlier mentioned an aha moment. What was yours? What was your aha moment on predictive maintenance that really caused you to drive this scale that we're seeing now in Carpenter?
You know, I've been thinking about that one. I think not directly for me, but I can see that aha moment in other people's, in some of the overheads. When I remember a couple of years ago in a plant that I used to work. Again, my coworker is here. He used to be in that plant. We used to work together, and we started with a pilot with you guys. And I remember when you guys went there, you guys came down with 6 sensors and the wireless gateway. And we saw the test that you guys did. And we actually asked you guys, can you leave everything right now with us? So whatever you guys took for test, it stayed with us in a machine. And when we start seeing that, and we start saving some areas of that machine, I was able to get $150,000 to expand that into another area of the plant. We recovered that money in less than 2 months with a couple of areas. So that was, I remember our plant manager was kind of like, what else do you need? And then there is another perspective with the vibration technology, and it's the process side. I have been approached many times by process people. Can I use this technology to track my process, not necessarily the machine itself? And we have done some tests, and it's been very successful. I had destroyed sensors. Machines had, eat the sensors and destroy the sensors, testing it, but, what is $500, with the benefit that we might be able to get out of that.
Sure, pretty nice when they're coming to you to deploy the technology that you want to put in place in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
David, it was discussed earlier, Tom Brodsky mentioned it, and John was obviously a part of this as well. 2019, going back in your memory banks here, 2019, 2020, by my recollection, is when GP really started to scale with predictive maintenance. We're up to, and we continue to, we're up to approximately 70,000 sensors, I believe, out in the world. What were the key factors back in those days that really drove that scale?
That's a good question. I think that, we talked about the bogey that we had, which was unplanned downtime. I think we are also blessed to have a leader. So Charles Koch is our parent company, our parent umbrella, of which you have Invista, GP, Guardian, Molex, so on and so forth. We're blessed to have a leader and an owner that does see transformation as a principle. And so it was being pushed pretty hard. And, I think many of you may have heard the statistic. I think, Charles Koch invests 99.9% of the revenue back into the companies also. And so, with the right value prop and the right bet, the money is there to scale a venture of this nature. I think that, there were other drivers at the time that we went through this, but just to reiterate, I think that that statistic about the labor participation, we've been seeing it for 10 years, but I think we woke up one day about 4 or 5 years ago and said, man, this is here. Like, it's not coming anymore, it's here. And so I think it just kind of took off. It took off from there. And success bred increased scale too, so we had to make sure to track that a bit.
A little competitive spirit between plant locations?
A little bit of that. Segments too. I think Tom did a great job. Continue to give him props. Containerboard was first. Now, I came from a containerboard site, so I'll share in that. I'll share in that victory originally. Building products was close behind. I think consumer never, what's funny about, I know we're getting to time here. What's funny about mature sites is it takes them a longer time to change because the case for change isn't there. If there's no labor problems, if I have the best analysts in the company, there's really no driver to spend a bunch of money, and this ain't cheap. Doing it at scale is not cheap. There's no driver to spend money and do that unless you truly believe that 2 years down the road and 3 years down the road, they're all going to retire. And we're doing that now. But I think it's a little bit what we saw in some of the lag, is that just that part of the human action model that John mentioned just took a little bit to bubble in. So.
Great stuff. Thank you. We are getting close on time, but I don't want to miss a chance to bring out the crystal balls and do a little prognostication and looking into the future. Tatiana, we'll give you the last word here. If you did have a crystal ball, what's maintenance reliability look like in 5 years or 10 years? What's the same? What's different?
I would say the same is the focus on reliability and safety. I think that will stay there for a very long time. How to achieve there is going to change, but the focus will stay. The other one that stays, I think, is the human insights and supervision. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where the machine will take over and there will be no supervision at all. The type of people and the knowledge of the people will require more, for sure, to supervise these kind of models, but they will still be there. The machine learning is not like it doesn't learn from nowhere. It needs to learn from someone, right? And from actions and from data. The thing that's going to change is, I think, it's system integration. I hope in the future, when you predict problems will happen, you can actually make work orders, POs, directly to the best supplier that will bring things on time with the lowest cost, automatically, Gen AI-ish. We're going to just get a notification, something is there in the yard, you have to deploy. And also, technology will help the people on the ground to make maintenance with all the goggles and everything. You're not going to have too many human errors when they're doing these kind of things. We have issues, for example, where people are not lubricating the bearings, so I think these kind of things, the reactive maintenance will go away. The scheduled maintenance will go away. Everything will be based on how the machine is performing at that time and the data behind it.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun, but we have reached time. Can we give them a round of applause?